The stagecoach hadn't even stopped moving when Clara Whitfield realized she might have made the biggest mistake of her life. The wheels ground against the dirt of Ember Ridge, Wyoming, and a cloud of dust rose around her like a warning she had been too desperate to hear. She pressed her face to the window, her breath fogging the glass, and saw the giant waiting for her. A giant. Not a large man, not a tall man, a giant. Jonas McCall stood beside the hitching post, and his shadow stretched across the street like a second storm cloud. He was 7 full feet of muscle and broad shoulders wrapped in worn leather and denim. Every other man nearby looked like a child standing beside him. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She had fled her uncle's house in Boston to escape one monster, only to find herself married on paper to another. "You're too small." Jonas's deep voice rumbled through the dust as the coach came to a stop. "But I'll make it fit." He meant it kindly. She knew he did, but the words chilled her to the bone. The driver cleared his throat from above. "Ma'am, this is your stop." Clara's hands shook as she gathered her single carpet bag, the only thing she had left in the world. The preacher's wife and 2 traveling salesmen watched her with pity in their eyes. They all knew the story. The tiny Boston bride headed to meet the giant rancher she had married by proxy. "Courage," she whispered to herself, her mother's last word before fever stole her away. Courage is not the absence of fear. She stepped down from the coach, each movement feeling like a step toward destiny she wasn't sure she wanted. The Wyoming sun was blinding, the air sharp and dry, nothing like the world she'd known. And Jonas was moving toward her with slow, careful steps, as if he feared startling her. "Mrs. McCall," his voice was rough like gravel, but held something else too, something uncertain. Clara nodded. She had to tilt her head back so far to meet his eyes that her neck ached. His boots were the size of shovels. His hands looked like they could crush fence posts. One wrong move, one flash of anger, and he could snap her like dry kindling. "You're smaller than I expected," he said, then winced at his own words. "I mean, you didn't mention. Never mind. Sorry." Despite her fear, Clara found her voice. "I'm exactly as large as I need to be, Mr. McCall." Jonas blinked. Then a ghost of a smile touched his face. "Jonas," he corrected gently. "And thank you." He reached for her bag and lifted it with 2 fingers as if it weighed nothing. The casual show of strength sent another cold wave down her spine. "The preacher's waiting," Jonas began, then paused when he saw her expression. "Unless you want to rest first. We don't have to rush." "The ceremony?" Clara asked. "But we're already married, by law." Jonas shifted uncomfortably. "Reverend Matthews insists on blessing the union in person, says it's proper, town's already gathered." Clara felt humiliation burn in her cheeks. "The freak show has arrived," she murmured before she could stop herself. Jonas's jaw tightened. "They're curious about us, that's all, but if you're not ready—" "No," Clara straightened her spine. "Let them look. I won't run." Something softened in Jonas's expression, a warmth she hadn't expected. "Good," he said. "You'll need that spine out here." They walked through town together, every head turning as they passed. Some people whispered, some stared openly, others muttered things Clara pretended she didn't hear. Jonas said nothing, only adjusted his long stride to match her small steps. Each time someone looked too long, he shifted subtly to block their view, his massive body becoming a shield. Inside the small white church, every seat was full. The murmurs died instantly when the doors closed behind them. Clara felt tiny standing at Jonas's side, barely reaching his ribcage. Reverend Matthews stumbled over his words as he read from his notes, clearly startled by the sight of them together. When he reached the part about speaking now or holding one's peace, someone in the back whispered, "God help her." Jonas heard it. Clara saw the way his jaw clicked, saw the way his shoulders squared. "Anyone with something to say about my wife can say it to me now," Jonas said, his voice steady and carrying to the last row. Silence fell like stone. The Reverend rushed through the rest, and when he hesitated at the kiss, Jonas bent slowly, carefully, until his lips brushed Clara's forehead, a whisper-light touch. Gentle as a breath. "Welcome to Ember Ridge," he murmured. Outside, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the entire time. Sorry about that. Folks here don't see people like us often. Humans stare at what they don't understand, Clara said. It's nothing new to me. Jonas studied her carefully. You speak like someone who's lived a life. Clara looked away. Boston taught me enough. They climbed into the wagon, waiting for them. As Jonas snapped the reins, the horses surged forward, carrying them away from the town that watched, like it was witnessing a legend or a disaster. You can ask me anything you're wondering, Jonas said after a long stretch of silence. You're thinking loud enough to wake the mountains. Clara hesitated, then asked the truth. Why a mail-order bride? Jonas kept his eyes on the road. People here see my size and think giant means violent, dangerous. Wrong. Women wouldn't come near me. Didn't blame them. I figured someone far away might give me a chance. Clara studied him, the strong jaw, the broken nose. The sadness buried in his eyes behind all that strength. Have you hurt anyone? She asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Once. When I was 17. Boys cornered my little sister. I pulled them off her, broke bones without meaning to. After that, folks decided I was a monster. Clara felt something shift inside her. Not fear, understanding. You were protecting someone, she said. People misunderstand that. Jonas glanced at her, something like hope flickering in his eyes. Maybe. The wagon rounded a bend, and Jonas's ranch came into view, a wide stretch of land, a solid house, a massive barn. But what drew Clara's breath away were the small things. Steps built beside the porch for shorter legs, windows lowered in height, hooks set within her reach. You built this for me, she whispered. For us, he corrected. A home should fit everyone who lives in it. For the first time since stepping off the coach, Clara felt something other than fear. Something warm, something dangerous. Hope. Clara woke the next morning feeling the weight of a new world pressing down on her. The room around her was small but warm, with sunlight slipping through the lowered window Jonas had built just for her. Her body still felt tight with nerves, and her mind was a swirl of questions she wasn't brave enough to voice. She dressed slowly, breathing deep before opening her door. Jonas was already in the kitchen, a massive apron tied awkwardly around his middle as he flipped eggs with surprising care. The apron looked like it had been made for a man half his size, and the sight of it nearly pulled a laugh from Clara for the first time since Boston. Morning, he said, glancing over his shoulder. How do you like your eggs? You heard me coming? She asked. The floorboard by your room squeaks, Jonas said. Sounds like a bird landing. Mine sounds like thunder. Clara stepped closer. Over easy, if that's not too difficult. Jonas cracked another egg. I can handle most things that don't involve delicate fingers. Threading needles is another story. I can do needlework, she offered. My mother taught me. Jonas glanced at her, something warm flickering in his eyes. Good. We'll balance each other out. They ate quietly at the mismatched table, one enormous chair, one normal-sized one. Jonas's plate looked like a feast fit for a whole family. Clara's portion was modest and neat. She watched him eat, his movements careful, controlled, always aware of the space he took up. Why did you place the advertisement? She finally asked. Jonas set his fork down, considering. Loneliness. It gets so quiet out here, I forget my own voice. My brothers and sisters grew up and moved on. I stayed. I figured maybe someone out there might want the same thing I did. Someone who wouldn't run the moment they saw me. Clara swallowed, remembering the first moment she'd looked up at him. I almost did run. I know, Jonas said with a faint smile, but you didn't. That counts for something. After breakfast, he led her to the barn. He'd prepared a side saddle adjusted to her size, the leather soft and newly polished. Watching Jonas work with the horses was a revelation. The animals, huge beasts with heavy hooves and powerful bodies, moved around him like gentle shadows. Not afraid. Respectful. They judge by action, not appearance, Jonas said, noticing her expression. People could learn a thing or two. Clara climbed onto her horse with his help, his hands spanning her waist like he could hold her entire body in one palm. But he lifted her as though she were made of air, placing her gently into the saddle. They rode the property boundaries, the wind cool against Clara's face. Jonas pointed out grazing areas, streams, fences he planned to reinforce. He spoke of the future with a quiet certainty that made her chest ache. "You're not what I expected," she said as they paused near a stream. "What did you expect?" he asked. "Someone rough. Someone who didn't know books or poetry." He threw a stone across the water, the stone skipping so far it seemed unreal. "My mother made sure we were educated." Set of mind was a terrible thing to waste, no matter what body it came in. Clara smiled. "She sounds remarkable." She was, much like someone else I know. Heat rose in Clara's cheeks. She turned her horse away, pretending to focus on the mountains. When they returned to the house, Jonas insisted she rest, but Clara refused. "I'm your wife, not a guest. Let me help." He frowned. "You're not my ranch hand." "Maybe I'm both," she said softly. He gave in with a sigh, though he watched her like a man guarding something precious. Clara fed the chickens, gathered eggs, and worked in the small garden until her back ached. She was exhausted, dirt-smudged, and strangely satisfied. That evening, she cooked dinner, simple stew, and Jonas ate with genuine appreciation. Afterward, he listened as she told stories about Boston, her voice softening when she spoke of her mother's roses and her father's library. She did not speak of her uncle. Not yet. Later, alone in her room, she ran her fingers over the carved flowers on her wardrobe. Jonas had made them for her. For them. That thought frightened her more than anything else. A knock came at her door. "Clara," Jonas said quietly, "I brought extra blankets. Nights get cold." He ducked to enter, nearly filling the doorway. In the dim light, he looked impossibly large, yet when he held out the quilts, his hands were trembling. "My mother made these," he said. "She'd have liked you, I think." Clara touched the quilts, feeling the careful stitches. They were soft and warm, filled with years of love. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and stepped back. "I'll let you rest." But a storm rolled in that night, lightning cracking across the sky, thunder shaking the walls. Clara curled under her quilts, trembling. Each boom felt like the sky splitting open. "Another crash," she gasped. "Clara?" Jonas's voice came through the door. "May I come in?" "Yes," she breathed. He entered, folding his massive body onto the small chair beside her bed. Even seated, he was nearly eye level with her. "Boston storms aren't like this?" he asked. "Nothing like this. This feels apocalyptic." Jonas nodded. "Storms out here can be wild, but they pass." Another boom made Clara flinch. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand on Jonas's. His skin was warm, rough, steadying. "You're not afraid of me," he said softly. "Should I be?" "Most people are. I'm not most people." Jonas looked at her like he wasn't sure what he'd ever done to deserve such a truth. The storm raged for hours. Jonas stayed the entire night, speaking softly when she was afraid, keeping watch when she slept. When dawn finally broke, Clara opened her eyes to find him still there, slumped in the tiny chair, his hand still loosely curled near hers. He looked peaceful. And for the first time, Clara wondered if she had misjudged what danger truly was. Perhaps the real danger wasn't Jonas's size. Perhaps the danger was how safe she felt beside him. Jonas woke with a stiff neck, his huge body folded into the tiny chair in Clara's room. The soft light of morning spilled across the floor, and when he lifted his eyes, he found Clara already awake, watching him the same way someone might watch the sunrise. Quiet, steady, unsure if they were allowed to enjoy it. "You stayed all night," she said. "You asked me to," he stretched, the chair groaning in protest. "I have slept in worse places." Clara smiled, and Jonas felt something inside him crack open, something he'd boarded up years ago. She dressed and met him in the kitchen, where he was already making breakfast. She watched him flip eggs with more care than she'd seen many men use with their own newborn children. They fell into a routine in the days that followed. Jonas worked the cattle and fences. Clara managed the garden and smaller chores. They met at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, sharing stories from their separate parts of the ranch like they were slowly stitching two lives together. But when they rode into town for supplies, everything changed. Ember Ridge stared the moment they stepped off the wagon. The whispers came fast. "Lord, she barely reaches his elbow. How's that supposed to work? She won't last a month. Poor thing, she has no idea." Clara kept her chin high, but each word stung like nettles. Jonas walked closer than usual, a silent shield between her and the town. At the general store, Mrs. Henderson didn't bother lowering her voice. "Beauty and the Beast," she muttered to another woman. Clara's spine snapped straight. She turned slowly. "Mrs. Henderson, that's an interesting comparison. You do know the Beast turned out to be the kindest man in the story, don't you?" Clara smiled sweetly. "But I suppose understanding the moral requires actually reading it." Mrs. Henderson's face went red as a beet. Jonas choked, pretending to cough to hide a laugh. Afterward, in the wagon, he shook his head. "You didn't have to do that." "Someone had to," Clara replied. "Besides, I'm your wife. That means something." Something warm and dangerous flashed in Jonas's eyes before he turned forward, snapping the reins. Life slowly settled again, but Ember Ridge was watching, waiting for the first crack, and it came at the quilting bee. Mary Sullivan invited Clara herself. Jonas warned her the women would pry. "They'll want to know everything. About us." "Let them ask," Clara said. And they did. They poked at her sewing, her cooking, her background. Then they slid toward what they truly wanted. "Your husband is so large. Must be difficult," one woman smirked. Clara calmly set down her needle. "Mrs. Henderson, are you asking about my marriage bed?" Silence slammed into the room. "Because if you are," she continued in a smooth voice, "I'll simply say this. My husband is more gentle and more careful than any man I have ever known. His kindness is stronger than his size, and I am fortunate to be his wife." The women blinked, stunned. Mary Sullivan let out a pleased sigh. "Well said." When Jonas picked Clara up afterward, she climbed into the wagon like someone who had just claimed a victory. "How was it?" he asked. "Educational. Did you know Mrs. Patterson's husband once got so drunk he tried to milk a bull?" Jonas nearly dropped the reins, laughing. That evening brought something else, something that changed everything. After dinner, Jonas brought her outside to the back porch. Rain had just passed, leaving the world glowing in silver light. "Look," he whispered. A moonbow arched across the sky, a soft rainbow made by moonlight. "My mother used to say those were bridges between heaven and earth," Jonas said. "Rare, special, like us." Clara's heart fluttered painfully. Jonas turned to her. "Clara, these past weeks, I wake up looking forward to breakfast just because you'll be there. I store stories just to tell you at dinner. I'm falling in love with you." Clara's breath caught. "You barely know me. I know you're brave. I know you speak your mind. I know you see me. Not just my size, you see me." Clara stepped closer. "I see the man who stayed awake all night because I was scared. The man who builds things to make my life easier. The man who reads poetry and loves gently. Jonas, I'm falling in love with you too." Jonas inhaled sharply, like the air had punched him. "Can I kiss you? Really kiss you?" She nodded. He knelt so their faces were near the same height. One massive hand cupped her cheek with impossible tenderness. "You're so small," he whispered. "I'm afraid of breaking you." "I'm stronger than I look," Clara whispered back. His lips touched hers, soft, slow, careful. Clara's hands slid to his face, and she kissed him back until his breath hitched and his control wavered. "Come inside," she whispered, the reins getting heavier. He followed her, but when they reached her bedroom door, she paused. Jonas spoke first. "We don't have to figure everything out now. We can take time." Just sleep beside me. I sleep better near you." "So do I," Clara whispered. And that night, Jonas lay beside her on top of the covers, holding her like she was something holy. Clara curled against him, feeling safe for the first time in years. Days grew into weeks. Clara and Jonas worked the land together. They laughed. They argued. They learned each other's rhythms. And slowly, something that had begun as desperation grew into something steady, something real. Then one night, it changed forever. A storm rolled over the ranch, thunder shaking the windows, lightning turning the sky white. Clara tried to sleep, but fear kept rising. Jonas stayed up with her, telling stories about his childhood, about getting stuck in a mine shaft when he was too big to fit, about how he realized the world wasn't built for people like him. Clara touched his hand gently. Maybe the world was just too small. Jonas turned his palm up. She placed her hand there, swallowed whole by his. "You're not afraid of me," he whispered again. "I was," she admitted, "but not anymore." Hours later, when she finally drifted to sleep against his chest, Jonas whispered into her hair, "Thank you for giving this a chance." But the biggest change came the morning Clara realized she was late and sick. She waited. She watched her body, and dread mixed with hope. When she finally told Jonas she was pregnant, everything inside him shattered. Fear twisted his face. The memory of how easily he could break things flickered through him like a ghost. "Clara, this could hurt you. You could die." "We'll face it together," Clara said softly. But Jonas shook his head, panic overwhelming him. "No, I won't risk losing you." Clara placed his massive hand on her belly. "This child is ours, born from love, not fear." Jonas closed his eyes, trembling. And it was in that moment, terrified, hopeful, both of them standing on the edge of a future they did not understand, that their real story began.